Yes, guys, welcome back. Another episode of Teams Like Brighton, and it is now coming up to the weekend where we play Tottenham Hotspur. But first, Richie, let's talk about the Bournemouth win. Huge 3 points for the Albion.
Yes, it wasn't always pretty. It wasn't the slickest of Brighton performances, but they got the job done in the end. I think. Remind me, what was your score prediction? Was it 2-0?
Yeah.
Nice. I think I went for a nervy 1-0, and for a long time it looked like it could be the case. But if you sort of look at the stats at the end of the game, I don't think it completely tells the full story. 63% possession, 6 shots on target for Brighton to 3 to Bournemouth. But Bournemouth had 14 shots of their own versus Brighton 16. They did actually employ some, I think, pretty good tactics, just in terms of Brighton were sometimes going a bit more aerial when coming out from the back, but not sort of route one, Jason Steele 60-yard passes against the team's assists, things like that. But they sort of lofted it towards the middle of the park, and Bournemouth were doing quite a good job of sort of cutting it out and trying to put pressure on the Brighton in their final thirds. And they had a number of good chances. Obviously, when we'll get onto the goals after he scored that great goal, there was I think a one-on-one with Traore against Steele, and he poked wide. Steele had to make a number of good saves. So I think this game was so important for Brighton to not bounce back from the Brentford disappointment, but just to show that they are in for the fight to get in Europe. And I mean, unfortunately, the table doesn't look quite as good now, but after the game, Brighton were 4 points off the Champions League spots. 4 points off the Champions League spots, which is nuts. But yes, very, very good win. Tom, what did you think of the goals? Because it was teenage kicks right through the night on Tuesday.
Well, first of all, Evan Ferguson at 18 years old is doing those kind of finishes again. Like, he's done it before as well. I think he'd done it against Everton earlier on this season, and he's done it again at Bournemouth. Like, the guy has so much confidence in him. It is ridiculous. It shouldn't be allowed at this level at all for a player of his age to be so cocky, but being able to translate that with his footballing ability in the Premier League. If I was a defender, I would be insulted, and I'll be going at my hammer and tongs to my teammates in the dressing room, saying, like, you can't let this kid do this to you. You've just looked ridiculous. But I don't know about you, but every time I watch him, and when I was watching the extended highlights online, every time I watch Evan Ferguson, I don't see a young striker who is rusty and rough around the edges. I see a young striker here who is verging on a complete forward. He's someone that has just got every little bit in the game that he can really just frustrate the defenders. He can use his body well to hold the ball up. He can get himself into positions and exploit spaces. He's not really the fastest player up top, but he's good enough.
He's no slouch. He's definitely no slouch.
No, exactly. So it's just amazing that this guy's got. He acts like as if he's got like this whole pedigree of Premier League experience, top tier experience, and I just think that this is testament to what the club are doing. There's a clear pathway for the youth, a clear pathway for young players to break into the first team. This isn't like this hot-headedness that you've seen in the past from other top clubs in the Premier League. Say, yeah, we want to build on youth, and then it just goes, it just gets shelved in the next 5-6 months. This is something that is genuinely being invested in properly. I think when Tony Bloom invested, I think it was about 80 million quid in the training centre. He said, like, we want to bring up a really good academy. Our key objective is to get the category 1 status. We've done that. And then after that is to just get a really good networking for youth products, for them to come in and have a clear vision and path to get themselves into the first team, or failing that, get themselves playing first team football. They've done that in abundance, it seems. So to see Ferguson just set everything on fire, really, he's just so good. He is absolutely a fantastic footballer, and I'm really excited to see him develop at this club, and I hope it's going to be for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. There's no sort of rawness about there. He's not like you know, when some youngsters get their first minutes, they look like you know, a foal coming out onto the field for the first time with their sort of legs all over the place and running hard, but not much quality. Whereas he just looks like the real deal. But interesting, yeah, De Zerbi is still sort of keeping fairly grounded. Obviously, he's given these youngsters lots of game time, but he thinks up until the goal, for example, he didn't think Ferguson was having that good a game. And he also feels that he can improve a lot out of possession, and also maybe just linking up with his teammates. So it's good that he's certainly not getting carried away. And then on the flip side, obviously, so just for the goal itself, I mean, I think there's a bit of debate if it was a back heel or sort of a flick through his legs for the goal. I'm not quite sure. I think it might have been a back heel, but beautifully taken. And then obviously right at the end of the game, Julio Enciso got his first Brighton goal, the 19-year-old. It was, so I was at the ground at the Vitality, and this sort of time seemed to stop. It was quite strange. So obviously the Gross does a lovely zip ball into the box. He does a nice little turn to sit down the defender, or a bit of skill. And then no sort of Bournemouth defenders ran back. And the keeper and Enciso were just sort of almost looking at each other like a standoff, Mexican standoff. And then he acted and he just slotted it home. And that was a really, the celebrations there were pretty ecstatic, because obviously they were delighted that Julio finally got his first goal for the club. And, you know, the fact that that sealed the win. For him personally, he said, you know, it's been tough for him learning a new language and getting used to a new culture. And I think he dedicated the goal to his parents who weren't at the game, but also his grandfather who passed away, I think, not too long ago in this last season. So, yeah, delighted for him. He's getting closer, I think. And he also looks like he's maturing a bit. I think earlier on, he was... I've seen comments in the past from Adam Lallana saying that he's got so much talent, but their players are screaming at him on the training ground to like pass the ball. So he's one of those, you know, the wonder kid who just tries to beat everyone. But now he's showing a bit more maturity, going for the right option. His decision making is a bit better. There were times when, you know, he would sort of run around a bit like a bit of a headless chicken. I think it was on the Aston Villa game when he came on and as a sub, and then he was substituted later on. Just a little bit example of, you know, not quite doing the job that they want him to do. But yeah, he really seems to be just head up football a bit more, I think, which was good to see. And obviously, yeah, very delighted for him to get his first goal. So yes, a good hard fought win, but a very good one. And it sets up an intriguing match between 5th and 6th in the Premier League table at Tottenham on Saturday.
Yes, it does. Yes. And just before we go on and just to talk about that, I just want to add on to the Enciso goal. I'm pretty sure someone just hit a button and the Bournemouth defense just froze. They just watched. They had so much. He had so much time there at 6 yards. The keeper had no idea what to do, and the defense had no idea what to do. And he just got himself. He could have easily panicked because he had so much time. And I think if he was aware they had more time, he would have panicked a little bit. But it shows again how he's progressing. Like, he's someone who is raw talent, and he's someone who's a bit rough around the edges, because there is this degree of selfishness in him, which I like. I like the fact that he's a bit selfish, and I think that can work to his strengths. But there is clearly like this missing link between him and his surrounding players, where, like you say, like Lallana's screaming and shouting at him to pass the ball, and so are his teammates in training. So he needs to kind of get that message across when it's right to take on the play and when it's right to pass the ball, release the ball. And I think that's probably why we haven't seen much of him. I don't think he's progressed as much as I reckon De Zerbi wants to. And but I do think that what we're seeing at the moment with him and coming off the bench, we are seeing signs that he is constantly improving. And I hope that continues to improve, especially as we've got Spurs this weekend. And like you say, it is 5th versus 6th, which is utterly ridiculous. I'm just looking at the Premier League table right now, and it's just bonkers how close we are. And we've got 2 games in hand over Spurs too. So potentially we've got this point where we could leapfrog them and potentially have a bit of a safety net between us and them if the games in hand go away. Bearing in mind that those games in hand are Manchester City and Newcastle United. But we're in this position now where we're fearless at the moment. We're utterly fearless. And I think that's down to De Zerbi as well. And I'm sure people saw on social media the pure joy and ecstasy De Zerbi was showing at the full-time whistle as he went to the fans, where you could just tell that he knew that the win was special. I said ahead of the match, the Brentford draw would be a good draw if we could get a win at Bournemouth. And now we've got 4 points in our last 2 matches. So averaging 2 points a game is good. That's top 6 form there, right there. Well, potentially title winning challenge form, which is great. But we need to keep that piling on that pressure. We've got games against Spurs, United, Newcastle, City, and Arsenal still to go. We still have to play everyone above us, which is mental considering it's nearly half of our matches left. We have to play the top 5 basically. So I'm excited to see what happens next. I think if we could get a few good results out of that, we've got a decent shout of Europa League, not just Conference League. But I mean, there's no. I can't believe I'm hesitating when I'm saying this because it's almost too good to be true. But we could be talking about Champions League football.
I love it. I love the optimism. I mean, yeah, why not? Okay, go on.
Look, but am I lying? It is mental.
I don't think you're lying. I don't think you're lying.
It's mental. It's mental we're in this position. It is mental the fact that I am sitting here talking about Brighton Hove Albion being an outside chance of competing for Champions League football. I won't say playing Champions League football. I think that's a little bit of a stretch. But if April goes our way, we're going into May thinking, we've got nothing to lose now. Everyone doesn't want to play against us. We could be talking about not just European football, but Champions League football, which is just. I was getting excited about going and playing Thursday nights, Richie, but I don't know about you, but I quite like the appeal of Tuesday and Wednesday night football, if you ask me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, and we've said this before, this is the season to capitalize. There's similarities with the campaign where Leicester won the league all those years ago because the others weren't at their best. And I think that's the same this season. Tottenham, I have no idea what's going to happen with them because I didn't watch the game, but I caught the highlights against Everton. They were dreadful when Everton went down to 10 men and were 1-0 up. It's just like, this is when you should be putting the hammer down and, making the relegation threaten to suffer. But there was only one team who looked like they were going to come back into that or even win the game. So, and they have achieved some decent results, I think, under Stellini when Conte was away. I think they beat Manchester City when Conte was, I think, having some of his illness issues. And they're a big uncertainty. I wouldn't be surprised if Tottenham actually struggled towards the end of the season. I don't think I think they could maybe drop down. So that's one potential space. And obviously, what a great way to sort of maybe kickstart that slide is by Brighton beating Spurs on their own patch this weekend. And I think that's very doable because, they threw away a lead, obviously, against Southampton, bottom of the league, Southampton. They look very unconvincing against Everton. Aston Villa have come from nowhere to leapfrog Liverpool and Brentford. And, we'll talk about Fulham and all that. Aston Villa are banging form. They're only 2 points behind Brighton. They have played 2 games more, but they could be a factor into this as well. Man United, for all their sort of, the fact that they're fighting for, several trophies this season, they're not looking that convincing. So this is definitely a time. I know your smile is getting bigger and bigger. Your smile is getting bigger and bigger there, but this is definitely a time for Brighton to get Europe, and I think Europa League is a definite possibility. I think Champions League might be a bridge too far, but if Brighton can beat Tottenham and Chelsea, the 2 games coming up, I mean, dare to dream, because De Zerbi's already making he's constantly saying we're dreaming of Europe. The players are saying it now. Tom is just grinning from ear to ear. And I think Brighton will do Tottenham this weekend.
And that's as much copyright law will allow me to play with that music. But look, like you're saying, like we're talking about Man United not being that convincing potentially against us. And on paper, they've been a bit slippery at the moment in their last 5 matches, and that's probably not helped. They're even getting a few criticisms of a few of the players that Ten Hag plays. Wout Weghorst is one of them, who Ten Hag has defended religiously throughout the season since signing him in January. Marcus Rashford just seems to be the guy that is carrying United, it seems. He seems to be the guy that has definitely stepped up a gear since Ronaldo's left. And I don't get me wrong, as an England football fan, I'm over the moon because Marcus Rashford is an outrageous talent who has been underused and underappreciated by previous managers at Old Trafford. But take away him and Casemiro, really, what have we seen from that United side? And Spurs, Stellini's at the helm, so he's continuing on from what Conte's done, because that's really all he really knows, because he knows that that's what's been instilled onto the squad. Not convincingly, mind, because Spurs are still looking for a trophy since 2008. And they're not getting the results that they have done. Son's not scoring. Kane's still maintaining that decent form. But he doesn't look as good as he could be. And there just doesn't seem to be any answers from a tactical point of view. And like you say, against Everton, the only side that looked to be in the game, even after going down to 10 men, was Everton. It just seems a bit ridiculous, the fact that Spurs are down in this position, really. I wasn't expecting it personally. And, Liverpool are trying so hard to recover this season. Arsenal and City just seems to be a foregone conclusion. Look, if we can get a result out of those 2 matches, I'll be very happy, because the title race is going to go down to the wire. The race for Europe is going to go down to the wire. And there are 9 teams battling it out for Premier League survival, which is just utterly insane. We're coming to the business end of the season where nothing's a given right now in the Premier League, and there usually always is.
Yeah, it's just so exciting. I have to say, I think if Brighton can beat Tottenham, then all hell could break loose. This could really happen. And I'm
buying the rights to the Champions League theme song, and that's going to be our theme song for the next season.
Nice.
And that's it. I don't care how much it costs me. I might have to get a new mortgage and just not tell my fiance. I will just put that on the house, and I think it was just money well spent.
Nice, but just looking a little bit further ahead. Obviously, after this London double that Brighton have got with Tottenham and Chelsea, obviously it's the FA Cup semi-finals on the 23rd of April, and then the end of the month there are games on paper that are a bit more winnable. Even though I personally think Brighton can win all of these. Forest away on the 26th of April, and then a few days later, Wolves at home. It's, and maybe we're just going around in circles here, but it's just such an exciting time. There's just so much going for Brighton at the moment. I really hope that it doesn't end in a damp squib and, it becomes a case of FA Cup semi-final loss and then, things really petering out. But I really hope they do capitalize on this opportunity. It'll be interesting to see if, the turnaround wasn't too bad, I guess, Tuesday night to Saturday. Do you think, Tom, we'll see any changes from the Bournemouth game? One thing to add was that McAllister and Caicedo came off with knocks against Bournemouth, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be serious. The Brighton tweeted out, I think, that the pair of them will be fine for Tottenham. So that's good. But yeah, so just who would you start? Maybe would you go for a Ferguson up top? Would you go for a Welbeck up top? Obviously, both have scored in their last two starts. Would you make any changes at all? How do you see it?
I think if I was De Zerbi, I'm seeing the fact that after Spurs, we've got a week's break, which I think is crucial, and especially when it's against Chelsea. With Lampard back at the helm, they're going to be looking for a big boost. Fans are going to be fully behind that.
That is nuts. How on earth is Frank Lampard, who was sacked at Everton, deemed not good enough at Everton, a relegation struggling team, and then Chelsea go, yep, let's bring him in. This is great. That's muddled thinking to the nth degree from Chelsea. I don't understand. Todd Bowley's thinking is just a madhouse. It's just nuts. But sorry, go on.
it mirrors David Burke, if you ask me, as a sporting director. But look, yeah, it is absolutely mental. And I think De Zerbi's going to be looking at that match again and think it's going to be crucial, the fact that we are staying well away from potentially slipping up. Spurs and Chelsea, United, and then we've got another away match at Forest. So it's crucial that he needs to rotate the squad when it needs to be done and utilize players. Maybe some players have to drop down again and just be an impact player in the last 20, 30 minutes. We know how De Zerbi works. It's very much a goal-shy first half, but then it's kind of like gung-ho in the second half. That's it. That's how it always seems to be. That's always has to be the style of play that De Zerbi promotes, and it's working wonders for us. And it's really important that continues. I think we could see a couple of players rested, whether that's just going to be on the bench and playing for that cameo appearance or impact role, then fantastic. And then I think we're going to see the team rotated again against Chelsea. And then hopefully we play our strongest 11 against Man United, because they've got Europa League to worry about on Thursday, in between the FA Cup, I hasten to add. So De Zerbi knows that that's going to be on their minds. Fatigue will be on the backs of their minds as well. Ten Hag probably won't rotate as much because he sees both FA Cup and Europa League trophies in the horizon for himself. So he's going to probably take a gamble on that, not rest that many players. And I think that might come back to bite them. So there's a lot of the thought process there, but also I can see it, either McAllister or Caicedo drop to the bench against Spurs. I can see Welbeck starting. And I think we might see
Colwell or Webster?
I was going to say, I think it's going to be a rotation there as well. And I think that's where it's going to be. That's where the fundamentals are going to be. And I think Dunk's going to get subbed off if we're winning well. Or I can see, again, the players that are earmarked on the rotation scale going to come in. I think they're not going to be any surprising substitutions in the next couple of weeks. And I think De Zerbi knows exactly what he's doing there. And I'm very much looking forward to it, even though I'm not going to Tottenham. And I'm really, really annoyed the fact that I couldn't get tickets. But it's going to be a fun couple of weeks for sure.
Well, speaking of Tottenham, we're very fortunate to be joined by Alasdair Gold, Tottenham Hotspur correspondent for Football London, who will give us the lowdown on the opposition.
Yes, and as Richie mentioned earlier, we're joined by football journalism royalty here at teams like Brighton by football.london's very own Spurs correspondent, Alasdair Gold. Alasdair, how are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. I've never had an intro like that in my life. It's wrong, but I appreciate it very much.
We'll talk ahead of the game, and you're very welcome for that welcome as well. We'll talk ahead about the game, but I just wanted to I know we talked about this off camera, but I just want to just chat about this anyway. Is your unique record of not just missing out on transfer signings, but it just seems to be big news altogether at Spurs at the moment. What's the curse down to? What do you reckon? Just rotten luck?
Well, kind of, yeah, because that's the problem. I don't even get to miss out on them. I have to come into work. So, if anyone's not fully aware, pretty much whenever I have a day off, I'd say it's got to be at least an 80 to 90% hit rate. If it's one of my 2 days off a week, something will happen. Last one was Conte left on the Sunday, which was my day off, and then the Wednesday, which was my second day off in the week. Fabio Paratici was banned globally by FIFA. Rob Guest, my long-time collaborator on Spurs, he pointed out to me that every single one of my days off is linked up with a Spurs manager. The last 4 Spurs managers either leaving or being appointed. I think it's just the club trolling me now at this point. It's just ridiculous.
Nice one. So let's get into it. There's so much to talk about with Spurs this season. We probably don't want to go over too much old ground because it's old news. But like at the moment, obviously Conte's not in charge. I believe Stellini's the interim boss until the end of the season. What's the mood like at Tottenham? And also, what's it been like under Stellini in terms of playing style that's maybe different from Conte or not at all?
I'd love to give you loads of positive answers to both questions. Unfortunately, they're not. Mood isn't particularly great around the club. It's such a weird situation because obviously they were 4th only till a couple of days ago. The midweek results knocked them down to 5th. They've only lost 2 out of their last 9. But honestly, it's the mood around the club. It's almost like one in a relegation battle. It's just such a low atmosphere. They're struggling to create chances and score goals at the moment as well, which sounds mad when they had a 3-3 result was one of their penultimate game. But they are, even in that game, they were probably their 3 main shots on target. There's a real kind of lack of belief right now in what they're doing. And as for things changing under Stellini, we were all quite hopeful that things might change. He might prove to be his own man. And if I'm going to try and give him as much kind of credit as possible, he's only had 1 game. But what I would say in that 1 game, he very much showed that he was Antonio Conte's assistant for almost 2 decades. It was pretty much could have been Conte at the helm. He is massively hampered by injuries. That's a big problem right now. So, for example, Spurs have got 3 of their 4 fullbacks out. So he can't even change to a back 4. He can't even do that. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt for now. Saturday will tell us a lot more. But at the moment, it's very much just more of the same.
And just talk us through like the whole issue at the club. It seems at the moment it's not like as if you've been shy away from managers that have a very good track record, Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte, just to name 2. What seems to be the issue at Spurs to go from being competitive top 4 side to someone that can actually challenge for trophies?
Ultimately, it's just dreadful decisions, and whether that's picking the wrong managers that are the wrong fit for the club, or if you are going to pick managers that aren't the right fit, you've got to fit the club around them. and something Spurs are absolutely dreadful at doing. So the one manager you missed out in the middle there, and quite frankly, I would have missed him out as well, was Nuno Espirito Santo, who literally pretty much did a little kind of walk through Tottenham waving and then walked out the exit door. But that's what they just keep doing. That they lurch from a manager like Mourinho, who has such a different style to Pochettino before him, and they don't really fully back him with the kind of players that he would require. So he leaves. They bring and lurch straight back to a very different manager again in a kind of a more, I guess you'd say, a training ground coach type in Nuno Espirito Santo, who unfortunately, lovely guy, absolute disaster at Spurs. It was just a complete wrong fit. And then they get all the fans excited because they go for Antonio Conte with the full knowledge, and everyone knows this. Conte is a man that needs a lot of money put into his teams. He's a good coach, but he's obviously an even better manager when it comes to clubs that have got a lot of money being able to put into them. He can build these really strong teams. Then tactically, his system very much requires the exact players that he needs for them. And that's just pretty much what it is. It's just lurching from very unusual, strange kind of managerial appointments where they're almost attracted by the glamour and the glitter of these big managers, but they don't actually know what to do with them. I've referred to them in the past as like a Poundland Chelsea, because that's what they do. They kind of get these managers and they think, yes, trophies, but they don't actually know what to do with them when they get them. And unfortunately, another side effect is the football hasn't been great. So the fans haven't even taken to the managers either.
How much is that sort of down to, or muddled thinking, is down to Daniel Levy? And also just from, I think some outsiders looking in, and I think like Gary Neville, who's maybe not the most popular amongst Spurs fans, but I think they sort of say, Spurs don't have as good a quality of players as the top guys. They've been in the top four for a number of seasons in the past decade. Should Spurs fans be more grateful, or how do you see it for both those things?
So, as for the responsibility, I think it has to lie at the door of Daniel Levy. It has to. He's the man that signs everything off. He's the man that makes the decisions. He's the man that in 2019 decided, Pochettino, he's taken us to 4 top 4 finishes, 3 in the top 3, 1 second place, 1 Champions League final appearance, first in their history. Yeah, we're done with that now. Which I think a lot of people now look back on as one of the dumbest decisions that probably a football chairman has made. It was going a little bit stale, but those are the crunch times when you are starting to dip. You've got to back your man, and Spurs didn't do that, and they've had 4 years of pretty much complete mess since. In terms of the rest of it, the players, it's hard to disagree with some of the players that have just remained at the club for years and years and years and haven't been upgraded. I think if you look back to probably some of those Pochettino teams, there's a core of some of those players that are very much still at Tottenham now, and probably should have been moved on, maybe in defence especially. It's a difficult one. Every year, every summer, pretty much, they bring in players that definitely lift the quality of the squad. So you've had Bentancur and Kulusevski have been terrific additions to the squad. Christian Romero, if he could just stop kicking people all the time, he could be a really, really world-class defender, I think. He's a World Cup winner now. So they do improve the squad. I think it's just they've never really overhauled it. And that's the big thing I think they still have to do at some point.
You mentioned him just then, and I was wondering if I could get your viewpoint on this. Mauricio Pochettino, could you see him coming back? And if not, why?
I think a lot of people at Spurs would have to swallow their pride if that's going to happen. I think it would probably be between him and Nagelsmann. Those two would be the most popular appointments among Spurs fans right now. Nagelsmann because he's fashionable and all of that. Whereas with Poch, there's definitely the romantic notion of unfinished business, and if anyone deserved a chance at Spurs to succeed, it was him. But yeah, from everything I understand right now, there's little doubts on both sides from Spurs whether going back to someone ever works. It does. There are examples that it does, but probably more often than not, it doesn't work. And from Pochettino's side as well, there's a lot of big jobs coming up this summer. You know, there's the potential of Real Madrid. There's probably going to be about 3 or 4 in Serie A right at the top that are going to be available as well. Obviously, really annoyingly for Spurs right now, the Chelsea job has suddenly become available, which means pretty much whoever Spurs have as their top candidate is going to be probably wined and dined by those lot at Chelsea. Yeah, Pochettino coming back would actually solve so many of Daniel Levy's problems. It would take a lot of the heat off of him. It would show that he can accept that he made a mistake. That's probably the biggest reason why I'm not entirely certain it will happen. But you never know. You never know. Fingers crossed. I'd be happy with Poch coming back. I had a very good relationship with him. He was a terrific guy and a very, very good coach. But yeah, it's Tottenham. They never do anything that you expect them to do for some reason.
And looking ahead to this weekend, this is a bit of a two-pronged one. One, I just want to ask, what's kind of gone wrong with Son this season, and how do you sort of see this weekend against Brighton panning out?
Well, Sonny, yeah, he's an interesting one. We have quite a big kind of Korean following on with football.london and all our Spurs coverage, and they're never shy in telling us their beliefs in why Son hasn't had a good season. And there's so many different theories, conspiracy theories, normal football theories. There's so many of them. Some of them, yeah, some of them I do hold some weight to. So, for example, the system that Conte uses, for some reason this season, seems to have brought Son a lot deeper, and that's not his natural game. He's coming to kind of collect the ball a little bit like Kane does in the Spurs half with his back to goal. Kane is fantastic at that. He's very good at holding the ball up, spinning, turning it. Sonny, for all of his incredible talents, that is not one of them. He will often, probably maybe 60, 70% of the time, will lose the ball. And I think that's having a confidence issue with him. The other aspect is the role of Ivan Perisic. For some reason, when it was Ben Davies, actually it wasn't so much Ben Davies in the back four, but Ryan Sessegnon down the left, they seem to work much better with Sonny, and Sonny would be more advanced. When Perisic plays in advance of Son, and it just doesn't work for some reason. It doesn't click, it doesn't gel. And I think all of that has contributed to maybe also after the Lord's Mayor show thing of him being the Golden Boot winner last season, having to follow up a season like that. Perhaps that's been a part of it. But he's just been, his stats are still one of those, probably most strikers look at it. I think he's still got like 10 goals and 3 assists, something like that. But for Sonny, the Premier League Golden Boot winner, it's not good enough. And his confidence-wise, he's admitted himself, he just hasn't been the player he has been. It's one of those things where we keep thinking he's going to suddenly reignite and he'll score like a goal or two or even a hat-trick against Leicester, who scored early in the season, but it doesn't lead to anything sustained afterwards. So, yeah, he needs something. Someone just needs to have a word in his ear, or even just maybe gets to the end of the season, has a reset, starts again. As for the game this weekend, do you know what? I think this is the first one where Spurs are coming up against Brighton, and I can see Spurs fans are genuinely really worried about the game. I think, especially at home, I think there's ones in the past where they've thought, Brighton are playing really well, this is going to be tough. But I actually think this time it's gone even further. They're actually really worried they're going to get played off the park. And that's going to be fascinating from a journalistic point of view, because obviously, without going into it too much, Roberto De Zerbi is someone that's been linked with the Spurs job. Not to say that anything I've heard in any way is that he's actually interested in that job. As I think a lot of managers are going to take a look at Spurs and go, don't know about that. But it's going to be fascinating to see the football he's playing is exactly what Daniel Levy promised the fans in 2021 he'd bring to the club. And then he brought Nuno in. Don't ask. And obviously, Brighton are going to come and play that lovely football, that really kind of possession-based attacking play that Spurs fans have been crying out for ages. And my biggest fear is going to be, if Brighton come there, play Spurs off the park with the kind of football that Spurs fans have been promised, that atmosphere in that stadium is going to be horrendous very quickly. There's been a lot of boos at half-time at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium this season, and I wouldn't be stunned if Brighton get a goal in that first half, how quickly that atmosphere is going to go in the wrong direction. So, yeah, as a journalist, it's going to be fascinating to see big pressure on Stellini, because Spurs have to go out there and attack, because otherwise the contrast in styles is going to be so glaring it's going to make for very uncomfortable viewing.
One person that we haven't really mentioned, and it seems a bit odd, the fact that we haven't discussed him as much, considering the fact that, you know, it's Spurs Brighton this weekend, is Yves Bissouma. Why doesn't it seem that he hasn't clicked at Spurs as much as he has done under Potter at Brighton?
Well, obviously, right now he's injured. Right now he's out. He's had an ankle operation, so he's it's unlikely. Then he might scrape coming back for the last game or two, but even that's doubtful. As for the rest of the season, Conte made a big thing. He's quite one of Conte's things, which I don't think is always the greatest thing. He's very quick to come out publicly and say why a player isn't quite good enough in this moment. And he did that with Bissouma. He said that he was struggling a little bit to take on the tactical details that he wanted him to take on. And he said that defensively, he wasn't up to the standard he wanted yet. Which, yeah, you know, as a 30 million summer signing, it's not exactly the biggest confidence boost to you in your early weeks at the club. But just for one reason or another, the system hasn't or didn't fit him. It's a very strange role. The two central midfielders in a Conte system have so much work to do. They've got to essentially be normal central midfielders. They've also got to act as playmakers, try to get up and support the attack. But while at the other side, they've got to fill in for the fullbacks every time they go forward. It is a massively energy draining role, but also one where you tactically have to take on a lot of different positions and roles and duties, I guess, that you've got within the system. And yeah, maybe it was a little too much for him to take on to begin with. There were a couple of games he played against Liverpool. He was absolutely superb in that game. There was another game, a couple of games later, I can't remember what it was, but he was very, very good in that as well. But he's also suffered a bit, I think, from Bentancur and Højbjerg being such a strong partnership, though that has also not allowed him too much to game time early in the season. And it's just unfortunate for him that Bentancur picks up the cruciate ligament injury, and pretty much at the same time, Bissouma got his ankle injury. So otherwise, he would have played the bulk of this second half of the season. And instead, you know, it's going to be starting from square one next season, really.
Right. Final one on the pressure money spot. Whatever. What's your score prediction for this weekend, Ali?
Oh, I'm so dreadful with predictions. Apart from the Everton one, I told Janet, my Uber driver, on the way to the stadium that it was going to be 1-1, and shockingly, it actually came to pass, although I didn't want it to come to pass. This weekend, I'm going to go for goals. I'm going to go for 2-2.
2-2.
Nice.
Bold.
Tom?
I'm going to go 2-1. North London's still ours.
Nice. I'm going for an absolute thriller. 3-0. It's going to be nuts.
Yeah. It's very possible. Very possible.
Another thriller. Another 6-goal thriller. I can't go through one of those again, Richie. Not after Brentford.
Cool. Right. Well, Ali, thank you so much for coming on. Just as a sign off, do you want to say where people can find your work and your social media and that sort of thing?
Yeah, no, of course. I write about Tottenham on football.london. On Twitter, it's just at Alasdair Gold. So, yeah, you can find me there.
Great. Well, yeah, thanks so much for coming in. And guys, keep on liking and subscribing and listening to Teams Like Brighton.